Everyone, I am absolutely delighted to be here. I can't think of a subject matter I love more. And I think that this kind of teaching has to come from a place of love. You have to learn about Hasidut from somebody who was actually take, or someone who has been so impacted by it that it has changed their lives. I'm somewhere in the middle between those two. And so here we are. We're going to have 4 sessions. You think 4 sessions is a lot. 4 sessions is nothing. I could do 4 sessions on one of the subjects we're speaking today. 4 sessions. Today we are going to be talking about the Baal Shem Tov, the master of the good name. But before we talk, because this is about Hasidut, I'm going to sing. And here's the deal. Every time I sing, and today we're only doing Nigunim, songs, melodies without words for today. There will be other songs later on future ones, which will have words. Today, only Nigunim, because that's really how it began. When I sing a Nigun, you're muted, so nobody can hear what kind of a voice you have. So you have permission and the freedom to sing at the top of your lungs. I always suggest when you're doing a Nigun, close your eyes. Close your eyes, give up, surrender, just sing. Just sing everything that you have in your heart, whatever, if it's sad, if it's happy, anything, just sing. And then we'll talk. Mama. Mama. So now we can talk. I'll tell you this from the Baal Shem Tov, and then we'll talk about the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov said, quoting Psalms 34, verse 15, Tehillim 34, verse 15, Su mera ve'aseh tov, turn from evil and do good. This means, said the Baal Shem Tov, turn evil into good, because evil is the raw material of good. Evil is the raw material of good. Think about this. This is a radical reading of Tehillim. This is something different. This is something new. And I want to talk about the Hasidic movement, which the Baal Shem Tov, by the way, didn't begin. So the Baal Shem Tov is the icon of the Hasidic movement, but the Baal Shem Tov didn't begin a movement any more than Jesus began Christianity, right? The Baal Shem Tov was the first luminary, the first light, the beginning of the beginning of what Hasidut would become. Next week, when we talk about the Magid of Mezrich, Dov Ber of Mezrich, that's when Hasidut begins. But it all begins centered on the Baal Shem Tov. Let me tell you a few things about the Baal Shem Tov. The Magid of Mezrich said about the Baal Shem Tov that he knew the language of birds and palm trees. Rabbi Aaron Shmuel said that the Baal Shem Tov's words were like burning embers, and that even his mundane conversations had a ladder reaching down from heaven. Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk said, once upon a time, the word of God was possessed by the Baal Shem Tov, and what he decreed happened. He was singular, and even among the ancients, no one was like him. And finally, the seer of Lublin, the Jose, said, should someone come and tell me that he saw the Baal Shem Tov construct a ladder to heaven, and that he ascended upon it while still alive in his body and in his garments, I would believe it, because everything said about the Baal Shem Tov is worthy of believing. So who was the Baal Shem Tov? Well, we don't know very much about the Baal Shem Tov. We have what we call in Hasidut hagiography. We have that in Christianity. We have that in every religion. That means holy biographies that come usually about 20, 30, 50 to 100 years after the saint or the tzaddik or the holy person dies, and people construct stories about them. Here's what we do know about Rabbi Israel ben Eliezer and Sarah, the Baal Shem Tov, which means the master of the good name. Now I should clarify that a Baal Shem, a master of the name, means a shaman, means a faith healer, witch doctor. That's what it means. A Baal Shem is someone who had the ability of combining different names and different letters and creating remedies from them, or being able to see into somebody else's soul. We have a record of the Baal Shem Tov in the town of Medjugorje, which is in the Ukraine, from 1742. Israel Baal Sam, it says in the records, and that he lived in a house that was tax-free and given to him by the community, which means that he was practicing as a faith healer in the town of Medjugorje, which is in western central Ukraine, already in 1742. That we know for sure. We know that he was born, give or take, between 1698 and 1700. Tradition says that he was born on the 18th of Elul, 18, so you know in Judaism, Chai, and Elul, the month that comes before Tishrei, which stands as an acronym for Ani ledodi v'dodi li, I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. The moment you see dates like that attributed to somebody, you should be a little bit, not suspicious, but you should look at it with a different eye, because these kinds of dates have meaning, and it's usually attributed to someone post-mortem. So the Baal Shem Tov is born beginning of the 18th century. We know that he lived in Okup in his youth, and I wanna focus on this thing. When we think, think about this. Look at how relevant this is. Where are we? The birth of Hasidut is in the Ukraine. In Ukraine, right now, of all places. I want you to think about this. Take a line, if you will look at a map of Ukraine and go down from Chernobyl to Kiev, all the way down the Dnipro, all the way down south, and then go west, and go all the way up the west, near Moldova, near Romania, and then go all the way to what is today known as Lviv. In those days, we called it Lvov, right near the Polish border. All of that, that's the area where we come from, Jewishly speaking, from the Hasidic movement. Nothing from the Dnipro to the east, because that was part of Russia, and Jews were not allowed to settle there. What's special about this time? What's special about this time is that just 50 years before that, two huge events happened. One of them was the revolt of Bogdan Khmelnytsky, Ymach Shmo. Bogdan Khmelnytsky was a Cossack, a Ukrainian hero. He was one of the biggest, horrific, terrible Jew haters in the history of humanity, rivaled really only by Hitler and maybe Haman. Khmelnytsky and his people murdered 300,000 Jews within a 4-year period, just 50 years before the Baal Shem Tov was born. 50 years before the Baal Shem Tov was born, there is the worst pogrom in the history of Europe. 300,000 Jews are murdered. Number one. Number two, Shabtai Tzvi. Shabtai Tzvi, a Sephardic Jew from Turkey, who declares himself to be the Mashiach and leads Jews from all around Eastern Europe towards Eretz Yisrael in order to reclaim the seat of King David. Nebuch, on the way, the Turks arrested him and gave him a delightful choice. You can either stop with the nonsense and become a Muslim, or you can go on with your nonsense and we'll kill you in a variety of delightful ways. Shabtai Tzvi, being apparently a pragmatist, not only a mystic, decided that he would convert. And that was the end of the movement. I'm saying this with some kind of sarcasm and humor. You should understand that scores of people committed suicide. Families were ruined. Communities were destroyed. This was a disaster in the Jewish community. And that, too, happens 45 years before the Baal Shem Tov shows up on the scene. You getting a picture? You should get a picture. You should understand what the conditions were around. That's one thing. Second thing is, Judaism itself had become, I don't want to say stilted or calcified, but it had become very stratified and very fractious. Why? Because there were those who knew, those who studied, those who knew Torah and Talmud, and those who didn't. And those who knew, which were about 20%, 18% of the population, and I'm being generous, held themselves to be Jews. And the rest, Nebuch Jews, but not the same. That too is happening at the same time. And here comes the Baal Shem Tov. Legend says that the Baal Shem Tov was orphaned at the age of 5, that he was dirt poor, that he decided that he would roam in the forests and in the lakes and the mountains, and then he met this mysterious man in the forest who had the power of praying in a way that was just astounding, and the Baal Shem Tov went with him for 3 years, and then the man left him in the forest at a certain hut with Rabbi Meir. And Rabbi Meir was what we call a tzaddik nistar, a hidden tzaddik. Somebody who outwardly nobody knew was a tzaddik. Nobody knew he was a righteous person. That tzaddik, Rabbi Meir, taught the Baal Shem Tov Torah and Gemara every day beautifully. And then the Baal Shem Tov was handed over to what were called the nistarim, the hidden ones. And he was with them for quite a while until he started being taught by Achiyah HaShiloni. Achiyah HaShiloni is a judge and a prophet from the time of King Solomon. Okay? I want you just to hear these things. I don't want you to start thinking like a Litvaker, like a Yeke. I go, oh, it's impossible for someone from the time of Solomon to be teaching. Don't do that. The Baal Shem Tov said that Achiyah HaShiloni was his teacher for 10 years and taught him from Bereshit until the end of Dvarim. In other words, from Genesis till the end of Deuteronomy, the entire 5 books of Moses. That took a 10-year period, and at the age of 36, the Baal Shem Tov revealed himself. 36 is another big number in Judaism because there are supposed to be 36 hidden tzaddikim who actually allow the world to continue existing. That's the legend of how the Baal Shem Tov came to be. One of the teachers of the Baal Shem Tov was a man by the name of Reb Adam. We don't know who Reb Adam was. We have no idea who he was historically, but he was a holy, holy, special man. And the Reb Adam told the Baal Shem Tov this: let me tell you the secret of who you are, how you came to be. What is the source of your soul? So Reb Adam said this: there was a very, very holy, holy man in the city of Tzfat, of Safed, in the Galilee, in Eretz Israel. Very important city because it had become known in the 16th century as the seat of the Kabbalists, of the Jewish mystics, really led by Yitzhak Luria, the Ari of Tzfat, and Moses Cordovero and Chaim Vital. This special man was nothing special. Nobody knew he was anything special. And one day, he is in his house, and the prophet Elijah knocks on the door. And the man says, who's there? And the man says, I'm Elijah of blessed memory. And so the man opens the door and he goes, Elijah, to what do I owe this honor? Elijah says to him, I have come to tell you the secret of when Mashiach will be coming, when the Messiah will come. I want you to know the exact time and date of when the Mashiach is coming. And the man said, wow, that's incredible. Elijah said to him, there's just one condition. I need to know what it was that you did on your bar mitzvah that caused the heavenly court to decree that I should come to you today and reveal the secret to you. And the man looked at Elijah and said, well, what I did on my bar mitzvah was l'shem shamayim. It was for the sake of heaven. It's Torah lishma. It's Torah for its own sake. It's not public. It's not something I can share with anybody else. Elijah said to him, well, my revealing to you when the Mashiach will come depends on you telling me that. And the man says, well, if that's what it depends on, I guess you should go back to where you came from, because I'm not revealing what I did just for the sake of heaven. That's private between me and God. So Elijah went back to heaven. There was such a gewalt in heaven, people were going to, are you kidding me? He said that? He said that. Well, they said, well, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go back down to earth, and you're going to teach the special tzaddik and teach him Torah and give him from your sweetness and all your knowledge. And so he did. When the sacred, holy, special man from Tzfat died, his soul went back to where souls come from. And it was decreed that because of his greatness, because of his humility, he will merit to come down to earth one more time. And when he comes down to earth, he will come down for the purpose of revealing hidden Torah, of giving sweetness and holy water and life, light to the people of Israel. And he came down, the soul came down, went into Beneli into the Baal Shem Tov. And that is the secret of the soul of the Baal Shem Tov. It's such a sweet story. I love this story. I love the story because it does quite a few things. One, it affirms that life is magical, that there is more to life than we understand, that there is way more to life than we can see or hear with these ears. It also shows that the Baal Shem Tov believed that his soul came from somebody that simple, that modest. Didn't come from a great rabbi, didn't come from King David, didn't come from kings. It came from a simple person who refused to reveal that which was intimate between him and God. And it will tell you something about the gestalt of true Hasidut. This intimacy, this notion that what I'm doing is l'shem shamayim. I'm just doing it for the sake of heaven, not for me, not for fame, just for that. So what did the Baal Shem Tov have to say? The Baal Shem Tov preached the complete immanence of God. What does that mean? All actions in this world speak of God. God is hidden right here on earth in everything that was created. And this gave the rise to the concept of Avodah shebegashmiyut, corporeal worship, meaning elevating everything that is material and part of this earth. Avodah shebegashmiyut means that since we are enclosed in material bodies, our worship should always seek to elevate the material, not only our own, but everything around us. And practically, this means that we do not ignore the material and seek only the spiritual, but rather we acknowledge the material for what it really is, holiness trapped in physical shackles. Ladies and gentlemen, everything, we are created in the image and likeness of God, or we're not created in the image. If we are created in the image and likeness of God, then everything within us has hidden holiness into it and needs to be elevated. That means eating. That means washing dishes. That means cleaning a house. That means tilling a garden. That means sex. That means everything that is corporeal, material in this world has holiness in it, and that holiness needs to be elevated. It needs to be used for the purpose of making this world better again. Think about that. So much about religion is about pushing away evil thoughts, pushing away the corporeal, denying the material. And here comes the Baal Shem Tov and goes, no, the opposite. Elevate. Use it. There's a concept called machshavot zarot, strange or foreign thoughts. Chas v'chalila, I should be praying, and I should suddenly feel machshavot zarot. I should feel strange thoughts in my mind. Well, the common knowledge, the common wisdom was you should avoid those machshavot zarot. Well, how are you going to avoid them? Well, just ignore them. Well, try it. Try it, right? I mean, I spent a long time in Zen Buddhism. One of the first lessons we got when we entered into the Zen center was you're going to be sitting facing a wall. You're going to be sitting in a certain way, very straight, chin tucked in, eyes cast down, stare at a white wall, and now no thoughts. Please. And you sit there, and after about 2 minutes, the Zen master smiles and goes, okay, how did the no thoughts go? You go, well, I had thoughts all the time. Yes, because you're a human being, so you can't not have thoughts. So one way is to go, well, if you have thoughts, ignore them. Deny them. The Baal Shem Tov's way is, no, acknowledge them, go through them, elevate them. Everything that courses through us, everything we have, comes from the Kadosh Baruch Hu, comes from God. Elevate it. Just bring it back to where it belongs. What a beautiful, beautiful concept. Beautiful, beautiful idea. I want to tell you a story. But before I tell you a story, I'll sing a bit and then I'll tell you a story. Yididai, 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 dai, dai, da da dai. Yididai, 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 dai, dai, da da dai. Yididai, 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 dai, hai, yididai. Yididai, 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 dai, dai, da da dai. Yididai, da da dai, dai, yididai, dai, yididai, dai, yididai, dai, hai, yididai, dai, hai, dai, yididai, dai. Yididai, yididai, dai, yididai, dai, yididai, dai, yididai, dai, ai, yididai, dai, ai, dai, da da dai, dai, ai, yididai, ai, dai, dai, yididai, dai, ai, yididai, ai, dai, dai, yididai, digi, 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 dai, yididai. I die die diddy die die I diddy die I die die diddy die I die diddy die diddy die die I diddy die die oh diddy die 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 diddy die die I die die diddy die die I die die diddy die 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 da da die I diddy die I die diddy die die I diddy die I die die diddy die diggy 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 die diddy die I die die diddy die die I diddy die I die die diddy die. The Baal Shem Tov had a dream one night. And in the dream, he said, go to such and such a village 3 days and 3 nights away. Parenthetically, all Hasidic stories take place 3 days and 3 nights away from wherever you are. Close parentheses. 3 days and 3 nights away, you will go to a certain village, and there you will find your neighbor in the world to come. His name is Isaac. Baal Shem Tov wakes up in the morning and goes, oh my God, I have to meet the person who will be my neighbor in Olam Haba, in the world to come. And so he gets up and he goes to the village 3 days and 3 nights, except it doesn't take the Baal Shem Tov 3 days and 3 nights. We'll deal about that in future sessions that we'll have together. He has a kfitzata derech, a shortening of the way. He gets there in 20 minutes. He gets to the village, he walks down the street, he sees a person. He says to him, forgive me, could you please direct me to the house of the holy Rebbe Yitzchak? The man looks at him and says, there's no holy Rebbe Yitzchak in this town. Baal Shem Tov says, no, there has to be. I was told this is the town in which the holy Rebbe Yitzchak lives. The man says to him, listen, there is an Yitzchak who lives in this village, but holy, he's certainly not a Rebbe. He's a tar maker. Baal Shem Tov said, okay, where does he live? Man points him in the direction the Baal Shem Tov arrives at this little hut, disgusting looking. Everything around the hut is filthy. Oy. The Baal Shem Tov goes, this is the place where my neighbor in Gan Eden is. He knocks on the door. A huge, horrible voice from inside says, go away! The Baal Shem Tov knocks on the door again. The man says, I told you to go away! The Baal Shem Tov knocks again on the door. The door swings wide open, and in the door there is a giant, a horrible-looking man, like with coal and soot and filth all over him. His hair is disgusting and smelling something awful. A giant of a man. And the man says to him, "You can't take a hint." And the Baal Shem Tov says to him, "Please, Rebbe Yitzchak, I've traveled all this way to see you. I would like just to spend Shabbos with you." This was Friday afternoon. The man says to him, "Do I look like an innkeeper?" The Baal Shem Tov says to him, "I beg you, I will pay you 100 kopecks." The man says to him, "Not interested." The Baal Shem Tov says to him, 200 kopecks. The man said, "I'll pay you a ruble." The man says to him, "Fine, you can come in, but you have to go into that corner." Baal Shem Tov walks into the hut. I can't even begin. You shouldn't know about how disgusting the hut was inside. There's just something terrible, an abomination, just awful. Walks into the hut, puts his things down in the corner, he sits there. What could possibly be the merit of this man that this would be my neighbor in Gan Eden, in the world to come? He says, "Okay, I'll just sit here and I'll wait. I'll see what happens." So the Baal Shem Tov sits down, he waits. Meal time comes. It's Erev Shabbat. The Baal Shem Tov says, "Oh, okay. This man is going to Mekabel Shabbos in such a way, he's just going to receive Shabbat in such a way that I'm going to be blown away." Nothing. No candles. Nothing. The man takes a bottle of vodka, slams it on the table, and takes like a half of a lamb, not really cooked too well, but filthy, and vodka, and then no blessing, no prayers, no nothing, and eats and eats and eats, and the grease is down his beard. The Baal Shem Tov is horrified, but he doesn't know what it is, because this is, look, there's got to be some hidden meaning in this that I'm not getting. They go to sleep. Morning, Shabbos. Man gets out, he's going to work. Goes to work, disappears for the other. There's no morning prayers, there's nothing. Comes back in the evening, filthy and stinking like before. Vodka on the table, another half of a lamb, and some other stuff, some potatoes in his mouth. He eats, no blessing, no washing the hands, no nothing. Disgusting. The Baal Shem Tov goes, I have to concentrate better. It's because I'm not concentrating that I'm not seeing the holiness of this man. He says, I'll wait. At night, I'll see. Probably he knows that I'm looking at him. So at night, I'll pretend I'm asleep. And when I'm asleep, then I'll catch him praying. Baal Shem Tov lies down. Nothing happens during the night. Shabbos is gone. Now it's Sunday. The man gets up in the morning, says to the Baal Shem Tov, "You're out of here." The Baal Shem Tov says to him, "Oh, please don't say." But I'm done. I told you wanted to stay for Shabbos. I let you stay for Shabbos. Now you're going. The Baal Shem Tov says to him, "Listen, I'm begging you. I'm begging you. I was told that you are someone so holy that it's hard to describe. And I want to know, by what virtue did you merit that the heavenly court should decree that you are such a holy person? Is it because of zchut avot? Is it because of the merit of your father?" And the man looks at him and says, "The merit of my father? My father was a rag peddler. A little Jew, skinny, nothing special, no learning. Go from town to town and sell shmates, sell rags. And I, as a child, would go with my father. Town to town, my father would peddle his little rags. And one time, on the way, We are going through the forest, and a group of Cossacks surrounds us and stops us. And the leader gets down from his horse and comes to my father and says, "Jew, kiss my boot." And my father refused. And the Cossack kicked him in the face and said, "Jew, kiss my boot." And my father refused. And the Cossack beats him on the head and kicks him and says, "Jew, kiss my boot." And my father said to him, "I may be a rag peddler, but I'm not a rag." And so they tied my father to a tree, and they gathered wood, and they set fire to my father. A little Jew, nothing. They lit the fire, and whoosh, like that, my father was gone. A puny little Jew, nothing. 1 second, and he's gone. And from that day on, I vowed that I would eat, and eat, and eat, and grow, and get big and fat, so big and so fat that one day, if the Cossacks ever catch me and tie me to a tree and set fire me, let there be a flame that will shine from one end of the world to the other. Let there be such a flame that people will know that a Jew doesn't burn so easy, doesn't burn so fast. And the Baal Shem Tov said to his Hasidim, at that moment, I understood why Isaac was to be my neighbor in Gan Eden. But what I still don't understand is, what on earth did I do to deserve to be his neighbor? Ya mama, ya mama, ya mama, ya mama, ya mama, ya mama, ya mama. Ya mama, ya mama, ya mama, ya mama, ya mama. Ya mama, ya mama, ya mama, ya mama, oh, ya mama, ya mama. Ya mama, hoy dum bum 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 bum. Oh ya mama, ya mama, mama. Yum bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Ya mama, ya mama, mama. Yama, Yama, Mama. So why did I tell you such an upsetting story, such a deep, heavy story? Because it has so many teachings in it. So many teachings in that story. Simple is to be a Jew in Ukraine, in Eastern Europe in those times, not easy, not simple. I look today at Ukraine and I am filled with admiration and awe for the bravery of the Ukrainian people. I am filled with awe, I have to tell you. They are setting an example for the world about what bravery means. But they were not always our friends. They were actually some of our worst enemies throughout history, and it's something that we need to remember. So that's one element, especially the Cossacks. Second, Avodah shebegashmiut. I told you that the Baal Shem Tov preached worship through the material. Isaac is not the Baal Shem Tov's neighbor in Gan Eden because he prayed so purely and lit Shabbos candles so amazingly and he laid tefillin and he did all this stuff that everybody wants you to do. No, he ate like a pig. That's what he did. His avodah was begashmiut. His worship was through the corporeal. And this is an extraordinary example. And on purpose, Hasidic tales, Hasidic stories, which is another element of Hasidut that's terribly important, telling stories, telling mises. We don't tell them for entertaining purposes. They're not entertainment. They're teaching methods. They're Torah. But they're Torah, not even Shebal Peh, they're Torah Shebalev. It's Torah that's meant to pierce your heart, to shatter all thoughts, to just cause us to just be stirred and be moved in such a way that we stop thinking. And then Torah can enter. The words which I command you today should be placed on your heart, not in your mind, not in your brain. That's what it says in the Ve'ahavta. Why on your heart? Because, as the Alter Rebbe says, God willing, one day your heart will crack open enough that all these words which God gives me fall into my heart. This should all be for love. But there's also a teaching about the Shema. It says in the Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha, you should love Adonai your God with all your heart. Bechol nafshecha, with your entire soul. Uvechol meodecha, and with everything that you have, your entirety. No, sure, that's what this story is about. Total. Nothing held back. This is what we call in Hebrew mesirut nefesh. Handing over of the soul, literally. Mesirut nefesh, we mean, sacrifice. Mesirut nefesh, I'm sacrificed. No. Bring it in. Make it real. Make it something that is sensual. Yeah? Everything. Isaac, the tar maker, gives everything for God, holding nothing back. He's not interested anymore in anything else, just giving everything. So that one day, flame. This is the Baal Shem Tov. How is the Baal Shem Tov described? The first description we get about the Baal Shem Tov comes from David Kolmnoy, who said that he went to the Baal Shem Tov's house and he goes to sleep at night and he wakes up because there's like the room is flooded with light. So he goes, oy gewalt, like they forgot the stove on in the other room. So he turns around to the wall. He can't. The room is flooded with light. So he goes and he knocks on the Baal Shem Tov's wife's room. He said to her, Holy Tzaddiket, I just want you to know that you probably forgot the stove on in the other room. She said, no, we didn't forget the stove on. You should go back to sleep. He goes back to sleep. He can't. The light is too much. He goes back. He says to her, please, it's just too much. I'm afraid the house will burn down. She said to him, you know what? In that case, why don't you go and put out the stove on your own? So he says, fine. And he goes back into the room where the stove was supposed to be lit. And the stove is not burning. But the Baal Shem Tov is sitting at the table and he's studying. Light like that. You don't believe that? I'll tell you this. When I first met my Rebbe, the Honishtoppel Rebbe, Reb Shlomo Twersky, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, it was a Friday, and on the Friday evening, we sat down for a Friday evening meal. And after the meal was over, everybody went, Rebbeinu, Avot, give us a word. And the Rebbe started speaking. And I'm staring down at the tablecloth. And the Rebbe speaks in Yiddish. I didn't speak a word of Yiddish. Not a word. I'm not understanding what the Rebbe is saying. Other than that he's speaking about Pinchas, one of my least favorite characters in the Bible, but we'll leave that aside. Pinchas in Yiddish. So, about a character I don't like, in Yiddish, which I don't understand. And I'm crying. And I notice that to my right and to my left, everybody is crying. And everybody is looking down at the table, and nobody is looking up. And I go, well, this is crazy. So I raise my eyes up, and the light was so much that I couldn't take it, so I immediately stared back down at the tablecloth. I'm not telling you this as some kind of a Hasidic story. I'm telling you what happened to me. What happened to me is I couldn't look at my Rebbe's face because too much light. Says in the Torah that when Moses comes down from Mount Sinai, Vekarnu pnei Moshe, and the face of Moses was radiating. Couldn't look at him. So much couldn't look at him that he had to wear a veil. He had to wear a veil, not because he didn't like looking at people or because of COVID, chas v'chalila. He had to wear a veil so that people wouldn't get blinded by the light coming from his face. Such things do exist. That was the Baal Shem Tov. Rejected asceticism, rejected fasts, rejected sadness, wanted joy. Ivdu et Hashem besimcha, it says in Tehillim, in the book of Psalms, worship God through joy. Bo lefanav birnana, come before God with joyful song. Also, I want you to know, before I sing you one more song, that the Baal Shem Tov really embraced Lurianic Kabbalah. So that's 16th century Kabbalah from Tzfat. However, big difference. Lurianic Kabbalah was for a very few people. If you could hack it, if you could get through Lurianic Kabbalah and really get into it, you're probably one of 1%, maybe 2% of people. So what good does it do everybody? The Baal Shem Tov adopted a system that really was actually elucidated first by Reb Baruch of Kosov, who was a contemporary of the Baal Shem Tov, in which Baruch of Kosov said that, no, you should never take Lurianic Kabbalah literally. You should take it metaphorically as psychology. Everything that the Ari was teaching, look inward. If you're talking about mending the world, it's about mending you. If you're talking about broken vessels, it's about the brokenness within me. If you are talking about bringing light back to where it belongs, it's about me, about where I was when I was a child and what have I lost along the way. It made it suddenly personal. Everybody has a soul. Everybody has a heart. Everybody had a childhood. And now suddenly that which was the property of maybe 2% of Jews suddenly became the property of anybody who had a soul. Think about that revolution. Think about how extraordinary that was. Suddenly, Torah and Kabbalah and God were not the property of some elite sitting in a Lithuanian yeshiva. They belong to everybody. Everybody. The simplest person who knows nothing. And I'll tell you more stories next time we meet about people who know nothing and why their prayer is beautiful. The Baal Shem Tov said that in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden, the greatest joy comes from the simplest person just uttering a word, not from scholars. I will leave you with this, and then we can see if there are any questions, and we'll talk about what comes next week. This is from the Baal Shem Tov. There are two kinds of not knowing. The first is one who doesn't even inquire, since it is well known that it is impossible to know. The second is one who enters and inquires ceaselessly until they actually know that it is impossible to know. Be that second person.
So thank you, Donnie. It's almost strange to open up kind of after this magical journey. We do have a couple of questions and we have 3 minutes. So I'll start with a beautiful question here. What is the spiritual essence of Nigun and why is it sung that way? It's a question for an hour, but it's so beautiful I couldn't let it.
The spiritual meaning, Nigun is the highest form of prayer. Reb Nachman of Bratslav said there are 10 levels of prayer and above them is music. I don't know how to say that even better than it's better than any kind of prayer that can be uttered verbally. A Nigun is the real expression of the heart and the soul, unfiltered by any kind of intellectualism. It is simply the cry of the soul and the heart. That's the meaning of the Nigun.
Beautiful. Another question I have here is about the power of stories. I'm not sure we have time for that, but maybe it can be a nice intro to further sessions.
Absolutely. The power of the story is that we human beings are addicted to stories. It's actually how we know who we are. When we think even of what history means, right, it's stories that come down through the ages. We learn who we are by stories that we hear. And stories can be mythical, they can be allegorical, they can be whatever. But stories cut through all the noise and go straight to that's why children love, no, tell me the story again. No, tell me again. No matter how many times we hear this, tell me that story again. I did that with my grandfather my entire childhood. Tell it again. Well, I already told you that, sir. No, tell it again. Why? Because it again goes straight to the heart. A nigun on a musical level, a story on another level. It is so much more effective than just teaching a Dvar Torah or giving a sermon. You tell a story, you tend not to forget the story. And the beauty of the story is it doesn't need to be explained. It just needs to rest with you. You will find out what the story means. A year from now, 5 years from now, 50 years from now, stories keep revealing themselves to us as we grow older.
So we have 1 minute. I'm going to ask one last question, and I will remind everyone that this is part 1 of 4. So there's a lot more to learn and spend time with Donnie. Can you maybe tell us the story of your first encounter with Hasidut?
My first encounter with Hasidut is my grandfather, Zecher Tzadik Livacham. My grandfather came from Lubavitch. But he stopped being a Lubavitch Hasid at 18. He went to Columbia University and then to JTS and became a conservative rabbi and made Aliyah in 1934, took the kippah off his head and said, I'm home. That's it. But so my grandfather looked like a civilian. But for all of his life, he always referred to him as a Hasid. And when I'd say to him, Saba, why do you always call yourself a Hasid? You don't look like a Hasid. And he said, Tatin, being a Hasid is a condition of your soul, not a condition of your wardrobe. That was my first encounter. And then my second encounter was through Harav Shmuel HaKohen Avigdo, who was Avido was a wonderful rabbi in Israel from a Hasidic family, and finally my Rebbe, Reb Shlomo Twersky, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, the only Stoppel Rebbe in Denver. So those are my Hasidic, and then I met a lot of others.
So thank you so, so much. I'm sure, like me, people here are looking forward to the continuation of this series. I'm dropping here also in the chat our website address, so you can go there and register to the continuing sessions. And I hope you all have a beautiful day, rest of the day or night, wherever you are. Donnie, thank you so much for
Thank you so much. And next week, the Magid of Mezerich, and we expand more stories, more music, more nigunim, but then also music with words. Beautiful stuff. Please don't miss it. Would love to see you here.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.